Sam, I've got
I want to
something.
be sensitive. Go ahead.
I basically have the study Quran in front of me, and I'm reading the surah that you mentioned in 33:56. And there's something interesting here that I've just read now, sort of in the study notes of, you mentioned that truly God and His angels provide blessing upon the Prophet. There's sort of a narration here of Umar ibn al-Khattab, and it says the following: a supplication is suspended between heaven and earth and does not ascend any further until you invoke blessings and prayers for your Prophet. Do I understand it correctly that the Prophet is therefore an intermediary figure to actually get the prayers of the Ummah heard? Is it right to say? So is it orthodox to say that Muhammad is sort of an intermediary for supplications and prayers for Islam?
You better believe it, my friend. In fact, it's interesting you bring this up, and this is something Christians need to learn, and I've documented it from the Quran and Hadith. When Muslims tell you they don't have a middleman, they're either ignorant of what their own sources teach, or they're not being forthright with you. You cannot be forgiven, and you cannot be pleasing to Allah without Muhammad's intercession and mediation. In fact, if you want, I can give you some verses to prove this. From the Quran itself, if you're ready. Are you ready?
That'd be excellent. Let me just grab my pen.
In fact, maybe Jonathan, maybe in the future, if you want, Lord willing, if the Lord puts in your heart, do an entire session on the deification of Muhammad. I know Muslims are not going to like that, but I'm going to prove it from the Quran and the authentic sources. In fact, here, if there's any Muslim present, and Sri will confirm this real quickly, just real quickly to prove my point. And later on, we can open up, we can engage in debate. I don't mind debate, provided we can do it respectfully. That's fine. I don't mind objections. But you ask a Muslim, in your daily prayers, do you perform what is called tashahhud? Tashahhud. Now, if Sri's listening, he can text in and say, yes, we do. Now, let me explain to you what tashahhud is. During their prayer, now mind you, this is an act of worship directed to Allah. During their prayer, they will say, in Arabic, peace be upon you, O Prophet, and the mercy of Allah be upon you. Peace be upon you, O Prophet. As-salamu alayka, ayyuha nabi. For the life of me, I don't understand, why are Muslims greeting a person who's dead and buried in Medina? Because remember, Muslims are praying all over the world. You have Muslims in England praying that prayer, Muslims in America praying that prayer, speaking to a person who's dead directly as part of their act of worship to Allah. Why are they doing this? By the way, the one who asked me the question, what's your name? I didn't get your name.
That was Rudolph.
It's Rudolph.
Oh, that was you, Rudolph? I'm sorry, I didn't recognize your voice. But Rudolph, can you ask Yusuf Ismail in South Africa, when he does those 5 daily prayers, why is he speaking to Muhammad, who's buried in Medina?
No, very good point.
Peace be upon you, O Prophet. That's part of their prayer. They have to pray it, or their prayer is invalid. So don't believe it when they tell you that, no, we don't worship Muhammad, we don't pray to him, and he's not a middleman. Now let me show you from the Quran that he is. Can I prove it to you, Rudolph?
Oh, please do.
Because I don't want you to take my word for it, because remember, even though I'm a Christian, I can be pulling your leg. So let's go to chapter 4 of the Quran, Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4. Let's read 64 and 65. Now, Jonathan, before you read those verses, let me explain something to you, Rudolph. When a Muslim defines Islam, he'll always tell you Islam means submission to the will of Allah, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's what he'll tell you. However, that's only partially correct. True Islam, according to the Quran, is perfect submission to Allah and Muhammad. That part they won't tell you. That part they will not tell you. But let me prove it to you from the Quran. Chapter 4, verses 64 to 65.
Okay.
Let's read it.
We did not send any messenger, but to be obeyed by the leave of Allah. Had they, after having wronged themselves, come to you and sought forgiveness from Allah, and had the messenger prayed for their forgiveness, they would certainly have found Allah most relenting, most merciful. So,
Wait, Jonathan, Jonathan, you confuse me. The messenger has to pray for their forgiveness in order for Allah to be found most merciful?
That's what it says.
Did you catch it? Rudolph, did you catch it?
I actually did.
And if they had come to the messenger, notice, you have to come to the messenger, ask Allah for forgiveness, and if the messenger then prayed for your forgiveness, they would have found Allah merciful. So that means if I don't go to Muhammad, that means Allah won't be merciful to me, will he?
If just to add to that, Sam, I'm actually looking in the study Quran. It actually says here at the bottom, it says the Prophet Muhammad is told to seek forgiveness for his followers, 3:159, 24 verse 26.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to give you those verses. I was going to give you those verses too. Okay, but wait, it gets worse. And then Michael is saying, I guess Michael's a Muslim, we say the same to Abraham as well. Well, Michael, again, either hasn't paid attention to the words of the prayer, or he's misinforming us. They do not speak to Abraham. You don't say, Assalamu alayka Ibrahim. You don't say, peace be upon you, Abraham. That's wrong, and I challenge you, give me the reference where it says that you say to Abraham, Assalamu alayka Ibrahim. You don't say that. What you do is, you ask Allah's prayers to be on Muhammad and his family, as his prayers are upon Abraham and his family. Then you invoke Allah to bestow his blessings on Muhammad and his family, as he does for Abraham and his family. That's not what I'm talking about. Michael, that's not tashahhud. Tashahhud is when you say to Muhammad, Assalamu alayka, peace be upon you, O Prophet. That's in your prayer. That's what your sources teach. That's what you pray every day, if you're going to be honest before God. Now, coming back to this issue, Rudolph, let's read verse 65. Now, see, it's going to get worse.
So never by your Lord, never shall they become believers unless they make you the judge in the disputes that arise between them, then find no discomfort in their hearts against what you have decided and surrender to it in total submission.
Wait. Who do they surrender to in total submission and perfect submission?
Muhammad.
To who?
Muhammad.
Did you catch that, Rudolph?
Yep, to the Prophet.
Okay, well, I'm confused. I thought Islam is perfect submission, surrender to the decisions of Allah. Here it doesn't even mention Allah. It says, if they do not perfectly surrender, not only outwardly, inwardly, it has to be an inward action, not just an outward display. Surrender to your desires and decisions, then they will not have perfectly submitted, and they won't be considered Muslims. Doesn't even mention Allah. Now, when's the last time, Rudolph, you heard Yusuf Ismail or anyone else mention the fact that true Islam is perfectly submitting to Allah and Muhammad?
Never.
You won't hear it, because you know why? They're trying again and again. In the case of Yusuf Ismail, he has to know Islam. If he doesn't, then he should be talking about Islam. And I'm not attacking it. I'm simply saying those people are public and debating. That means they must be qualified in discussing these issues. Therefore, they must know what their religion teaches. So he surely must know. Shabir Ali surely must know. All these other people surely must know this is what the Quran teaches. So then why do they withhold that information from the non-Muslims? Because it's quite embarrassing, isn't it? Because here you're saying a creature, a fallible, imperfect creature, has basically taken the place of Jesus Christ and supplanted him as their mediator and intercessor. Right?
Yeah, and Shan, just to sort of add, it says here that people cannot be considered true believers until they make the Prophet the judge between them and their disputes, in all their doubts, uneasy about his judgments. And it goes on and on, and it goes to Al-Zubar.
Rudolph, I'm going to make your day. Do me a favor when you get a chance. Read Tafsir Ibn Kathir on 465. Do you want to really get excited? On chapter 4, this is in my articles. I've actually used this in debate. The arguments I'm giving you guys are battle tested. David Wood and I have used these arguments in our, when I say spiritual battles, I don't mean physical, with Muslims, especially the apologists. Did you know what Ibn Kathir says about chapter 4, verse 65?
Please say.
Why that? You know what Ibn Kathir says about chapter 4, verse 65? Why it was quote unquote revealed?
Go ahead.
Please go for it.
Chapter 4, verse 65, where it says you have to submit to Muhammad perfectly. According to Ibn Kathir, there was a man who didn't like Muhammad's decision, and he went complaining to Umar. This is in Ibn Kathir. I'm not lying to you. So when he told Umar, this is what the Messenger of Allah said, and Umar said, and so basically I'm giving you the gist. He goes, so what's your problem? He goes, well, I don't like the decision. He goes, oh, you don't like the decision? He goes, hold on a second. Umar went in, got his sword, and cut the man's neck off. And then the passage was composed telling people you better perfectly submit to Muhammad. Notice, not a word of rebuke to Umar. He didn't rebuke Umar saying, how dare you kill this man? What's wrong with you? Why would you kill this man? Are you nuts? Are you out of your mind? No, instead the verse came down saying, you better perfectly submit to Muhammad. That's chapter 4, verse 65, and Ibn Kathir's commentary on that. Okay, now, let me give you Ibn Kathir's commentary on 464, because now, Rudolph, the question you need to ask people like Yusuf Ismail, if Surah 464 is a universal command, a command that Allah revealed for all peoples at all times, how then can a Muslim implement that passage now that Muhammad is dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I come to Muhammad and ask Allah for forgiveness, and then Muhammad pray for my forgiveness in order to find Allah compassionate, merciful towards me? How can I do it? He's dead. Well, Muslims came up with the solution to that dilemma. Now here's the solution. I'm going to read to you Ibn Kathir's exegesis of this passage, and conveniently, this particular citation is omitted from the English version. You have to read it in the Arabic. I wonder why they omitted it. Because the particular people that edited Tafsir Ibn Kathir into English, Darus Salam Publications, they're a Salafi website. And they are a very strict, puritanical form of Islam that condemn any prayers to Muhammad, especially praying to him at his gravesite. So what they did was they expunged all these references and citations showing Muslims not only praying to Muhammad and asking him to intercede, but going to his gravesite and doing so. So this particular narration will not be found in the Darus Salam, right, English abridged translation of Tafsir Ibn Kathir. They omitted it. And they even admit, if you read the introduction, they omitted material that they deem to be weak or contrary to what the Quran and Sunnah teach. But if you read the Arabic, and we provided an English translation of the Arabic, this is what it says. Chapter 4, verse 64 of the Quran, here's what Ibn Kathir says. You with me? You guys ready?
Yep.
Go for it.
All right. Allah is instructing the sinners, when they commit a sin, to come to the Messenger of Allah and ask forgiveness in His presence. Well, He's not here. How am I going to ask forgiveness in His presence? And then they ask Him to request forgiveness. And certainly if they did that, Allah would relent towards them and have mercy on them. And for that reason, He said, they would have found Allah oft returning merciful. Now watch this. And Sheikh Mansour al-Sabah, recollected in his book, The Perfections, Shamoun, the well-known, famous transmission from Utbi. Utbi narrated this. Watch this. I was sitting by the grave of the Prophet. Catch this, Rudolph. I was sitting by the grave of the Prophet. And a Bedouin came and said, peace be upon you, O Prophet of Allah. Do you remember what I just said earlier, Rudolph? That in their prayers, Muslims say, Assalamu alayka, ayyuha Nabi. Peace be upon you, O Prophet. Here's a Bedouin at the grave of Muhammad, and he's talking to Muhammad who's dead in the grave. Peace be upon you, O Prophet of Allah. I heard Allah say, now he's talking to Muhammad here. I heard Allah say, and if they had come to thee when they had wronged their souls and asked forgiveness of Allah, that the Messenger had also asked forgiveness for them, they would have surely found Allah oft returning with compassion merciful. And I came to you asking forgiveness for my sin, taking you as intercessor to my Lord. You see what this Bedouin did? Now you think maybe this Muslim Utbi would rebuke him, right? Saying, what are you doing, man? The Prophet said, watch this. Then he started reciting verses, O you best of those whose bones are buried at Al-Ha, from the sweet scent of those bones, the whole areas of Al-Ha and Akumu became perfumed. I sacrifice myself to the grave that you live in. I sacrifice myself to the grave that you live in. It is purity, and in it is incredible generosity. Now watch this. Watch this. Here's the conclusion. Then the Bedouin departed, and sleep overcame me. And I saw the Prophet in my sleep, and he said, O Udbi, follow the Bedouin and give him the glad tidings that Allah has forgiven him. Did you catch it? Do you see that?
Yeah, for sure.
Udbi, Muhammad came to this man in the dream, supposedly the dream. Go after the Bedouin. Give him glad tidings. Allah has forgiven him. So no condemnation, no rebuke, no prohibition, actually encouragement. You did the right thing by coming to the grave of Muhammad, speaking to him, although he's dead, because this is the only way you can then carry out this command. You need to come to Muhammad in his presence and ask him to forgive you, and Muhammad will then ask Allah and he'll forgive him. Talk about mediation and intercession.
Yeah, for sure. That's excellent.
So,
yeah, Sam, just to...
There you have it.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
Sorry, just to interrupt you, the study Quran actually says the following. It says, this verse further suggests the intercessory role of the Prophet, for it asserts that if these two men sought forgiveness of God for themselves, the Prophet would also seek forgiveness for them, and they would then find God relenting and merciful. So there's definitely a connection. that Muhammad is an intercessory or intermediary figure in Islam.
Well, it definitely is. I didn't even mention the hadith. I stuck with the Quran, and then I gave you Ibn Kathir's implementation of the passage, because not everyone accepts the hadith. Like you have this gentleman, Michael. He just says in comments something about he doesn't follow Sunnis or Shia, so I guess he's a Qurani. He's a Quran-only Muslim. But he's still going to have to address, he's going to have to address chapter 4, verse 64. It's there. Now, as a Quran-only Muslim who doesn't follow the hadith, he's going to have to explain whether that passage is obsolete, because it says, they come to you, Muhammad, the messenger. How is he going to now carry out that specific command in order to make sure that Allah will be merciful to him? Because it's there. He can't deny it. It's right there. If they come to you and ask Allah for forgiveness and you pray for their forgiveness, they would find Allah repenting and most merciful. He's going to have to deal with it. He doesn't believe the hadith, but the passage is there. That's why I quoted the Quran. If I quoted the hadith, they'll say, you know what, that's the hadith, who cares? Well, my friend, you're going to have to care, because the Quran says the only way that you can have the assurance that Allah will forgive you is if you go to Muhammad and Muhammad prays for you. How can you carry out that command now that he's dead and buried in Medina? So are you saying that passage of the Quran is obsolete? It's chapter 4 of the Quran, verse 64. Surah An-Nisa, verse 64. So thank you for admitting at least those parts of the Quran are obsolete. Therefore, they cannot be universal, because you're saying, basically, there's no way of implementing that command, which means you'll remain uncertain of the forgiveness of your sins, because this passage ties your forgiveness with you coming to Muhammad and Muhammad praying for you, something he cannot do because he's dead. You can't get around it. Right? So, I hope that excited you, Rudolph.
Yeah, that was very good. Just to get it clear again, so it's Surah 4, 64 and 65 for the actual need for forgiveness, and then Surah 3, 31 and 32 for the sort of the Muslim cannot submit without submitting to Muhammad as well.
You got to obey Muhammad in order for Allah to love you, and if you don't obey Muhammad, Allah will not love you. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
In fact, let me read another passage for you. 9:103, chapter 9, verse 103 of the Quran. Chapter 9, verse 103. And we'll go back to, again, I'm here to serve you guys. I can do anything you guys want. We can talk about this, anything, whatever you want. But go to chapter 9, verse 103. 9:103, read it for me.
I can go ahead. Take obligatory alms out of their wealth, through which you may cleanse and purify them and pray for them. Indeed, the prayer is a source of peace for them, and Allah is all-hearing, all-knowing.
All-hearing.
Did you read that again one more time?
So take sadaqah or obligatory alms out of their wealth, through which you may cleanse and purify them and pray for them. Indeed, your prayer is a source of peace for them, and Allah is all-hearing, all-knowing.
Now, Rudolph, I have a problem here. It says Muhammad is to take alms from the Muslims and then pray for them, because their prayers is a source of security for them, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so then how can Muslims carry out that command today? Now, notice the desperation of Michael. He says it doesn't mention the name Muhammad. Well, most of the passages speak of the prophet or a messenger, don't mention Muhammad. Therefore, who's that messenger? You? So, Michael, who's it talking about when it says the messenger? See, this is what happens when people get desperate and don't want to deal with their sources. Notice he's trying to convince us that in chapter 4, verse 64, because the name Muhammad is not mentioned, it's not Muhammad. Who's the messenger that you're supposed to come to then? Okay, forget it. It's not Muhammad. Who is it? Rashid Khalifa? Whoever you posit as the messenger, he's not here today. So if you want to say it's Rashid Khalifa, you still got problems, because Rashid Khalifa got murdered in Arizona by a militant Muslim for claiming to be the messenger that came after Muhammad. So are you going to go to Rashid Khalifa's grave?
I don't believe in Rashid Khalifa as a messenger. It's speaking about in general. It's speaking about every messenger. It says, For we have never sent any apostle, save that he should be aided by God's will. It's speaking in general.
And finish it. Keep going. Don't stop. Keep going. Don't stop. You read the first part. Keep going.
We did not send any messenger, but that he should be obeyed by Allah's permission. And had they, when they were unjust to themselves, come to you and ask forgiveness.
To you? Who's you? Come to you. Michael, tell me who the you. Who's the you?
Yeah, it's referring to Muhammad. I agree with that, but it's...
Oh, so now you admit I'm right. It says if they come to
So
you.
can
How
you
do you
not
come
put
to
Michael
Muhammad?
down because we can't hear him? Can you not put Michael down? We can't hear him.
Anyway, Michael, you just and then proved I was right because you said I was wrong, and now you turn out to prove my point. It is Muhammad. So now, how do you come to Muhammad?
How you understand? See, it's you are trying to understand the verse.
Yeah. I can't hear him anyway.
Yeah, can't you?
Okay, well, thank you, Michael, for proving I'm right, because you first said I'm wrong, but now you said it is Muhammad. So now you're going to have to deal with that. You're going to have to struggle with that. Anyway, let's not talk over each other, Michael. All right. Rudolph, by the way, in chapter 9, verse 103 of the Quran, Jonathan, can you mute this guy? What's going to happen here? Anyway, in chapter 9, verse 103, Rudolph, remember, that passage is another one that you can use because it says that they have to give alms to Muhammad, and then they'll pray for them because their prayers are a source of security. How do Muslims today implement that passage? How do you give alms to Muhammad when he's dead? And how does Muhammad then pray for me because his prayers are a source of security for me? Does that mean all the generations that came after Muhammad died are robbed of the blessing and privilege of having Muhammad pray for them? Do you see the dilemma that these passages create?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so it cannot be, therefore, a truth revealed for all people of all time, because if it's only relevant to the people of that time, then obviously people obviously cannot extend a blessing or get sort of a charitable offering towards Muhammad unless he is sort of an intermediary being. Am I understanding it correctly?
100%. That's why the Muslims who are not Salafi, the Asharis, the Maturidis, even the Shia, believe in something called tawassul. Tawassul means that you can actually ask Muhammad, you can call out to Muhammad, and Muhammad will hear you in his grave, because they're more consistent with their belief that the Quran is a universal message than the Salafi or the Quran-only Muslims who cannot explain how they continue to implement these passages till this day. How do you implement them? But then you have the Asharis and the Maturidis and the Shia, they believe in something called tawassul, wasila, where they, like the Roman Catholics believe, you can ask Muhammad or righteous saints who have died, and you can ask them to pray for you. So you'll have them say, for example, these Asharis, Maturidis, they'll say, Ya Muhammad, Ya Rasulullah. They'll actually call out to him in their prayers, asking him to intercede for them, and they're actually prayers they have telling you how to ask him for his intercession now that he's dead and buried in Medina. So that actually they're more consistent. They'll tell you that he's alive in his grave. They go, he's alive in what's called barzakh, and that his body cannot decay, because Allah has sworn that the earth will not consume the bodies of the prophets. So according to Muhammad, the bodies of the prophets do not decay. Well, we know that's false, don't we?
For sure.
How do we know that's false? Someone guess. It's in the Bible. How do we know that's? It's in the Bible. Moses took the bones of Joseph out of Egypt into the Promised Land. Not his body, but his bones.
Yeah, for sure.
So according to the Bible, Joseph's body decayed. All that was remaining were the bones. But Muhammad in the Hadith says that Allah will not allow the earth to consume the bodies of the prophets, so their bodies remain intact. Not according to Genesis or Exodus, or even in Judges, because you see that when Joshua died, it says in Joshua, the book of Joshua, I apologize, when Joseph died, Moses took out the bones of Joseph, and then Joshua took the bones of Joseph and then buried it in the land of Canaan. His bones, so his body had decayed. So much from the Hadith being a second source of inspiration. But I hope that helped you out, Rudolph.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thanks, Sam. No, that was great.